And so I had a text message conversation with our executive director, Liz Charles. I think I said Wagner, my fault. She is now married, Liz Charles. And our board president, Laura Lane. And we said we have to do something because I know I need a space and I need a community right now. And I know that so many do. And so we pulled together with so many to make this moment happen tonight. And so I'm grateful for all of you being here. And I'm excited for you to hear from our wonderful list of speakers so we can honor the life of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So the first speaker on our list will have prayer and inspirational words from Rabbi Vered Harris from Temple B'nai Israel.
Thank you, and thank you to the Oklahoma Women's Coalition for pulling us together. Indeed, I am amongst those who appreciate and need the space. I learned of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death 10 minutes before Rosh Hashanah services began Friday night. By now, most of you know, if you did not before, that we are in the midst of the holiest time of year for the Jewish people. So I put the news of Justice Ginsburg's death into a little box in my heart and did not acknowledge that I knew. Saturday morning, our worship continued, and I opened in tears, acknowledging the tremendous loss I share with, of course, everyone here, and also with scores of Jewish women, girls, men, and boys who recognize Justice Bader's extraordinary mind, her incomparable courage, and the pride we feel that this Jewish woman spoke for justice in this nation. Jane Sharon DeHart, Ginsburg's biographer, wrote how Ruth's mother, Celia, introduced her to women who demonstrated what it meant to be Jewish, American, and female. These were women of valor by virtue of their courage and humility. A woman of valor is a phrase that comes from Tanakh, from the Hebrew scriptures, from Proverbs 31. Jewish woman of valor, Ruth, admired women such as Emma Lazarus, Henrietta Zold, and Lillian Wald. Ruth Bader was 17 when her mother died, and the gender disparities in synagogue life at that time were an obstacle for her as a young woman grieving. And even though Ruth had a deep sense of a Jewish identity, she was not involved in synagogue life because her experience early on was that it was discriminatory against women. Many years later, Ginsburg went with her adult granddaughter to high holiday services exactly this time of year, and her biographer wrote, Ruth was really impressed. It was a female cantor, and there was a female rabbi. And then she sort of got quiet and she said, you know, if that had been true earlier, things might have been different. And it is true now, in part because Ruth Bader Ginsburg pursued justice for women in the workplace, for women in the American story, for women like me to have the audacious thought that pulpits are not exclusively for men, or women like my sister, a research scientist seeking to cure cancer, or for any woman to pursue any career of her passion, deserving equal pay for equal work, and not having their gender or sex as an obstacle to improving the world with her intellect and talent. Yes! Being Jewish is not defined by showing up at synagogue, although members of my congregation who are here don't take that too much to heart. It's an outlook on life. It is internalizing Jewish values. It's facing discrimination and being misunderstood. It is celebrating the richness of our peoplehood, the voice of our prophets, the battle cry of our ancient judges like Deborah, who preached justice. And it's upholding the highest ideals to improve this world for all people, our neighbors and strangers alike. In her own words, Justice Ginsburg said, "My heritage as a Jew and my occupation as a judge fit together symmetrically. The demand for justice runs through the entirety of Jewish history and Jewish tradition. I take pride in and draw strength from my heritage, as signs in my chambers attest, a large silver mezuzah on my doorpost, a gift from the Shulamite School for Girls in Brooklyn. On 3 walls, an artist's renditions of Hebrew letters, the command from Deuteronomy, Tzedek, Tzedek, Tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. And if you want to see that in the Hebrew, Sammy Donshin has a sign with it for us tonight. Those words are ever-present reminders of what just judges must do that they may thrive. In Jewish tradition, we have a memorial prayer called El Malei Rachamim, God full of compassion. Although Justice Ginsburg will not be laid to rest until after Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish year. In closing, I'd like to offer an interpretation of this prayer. In doing so, may we honor the soul of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg as it continues its journey from the highest court of this land to the highest courts of the heavens above. May the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace and sadness the way of all things. May Ruth Bader Ginsburg's memory be for us a blessing, and may we never let the light of her justice grow dim. May we remember all her worthy and righteous deeds, that her memory be forever bound up in the bond of eternal life. The Eternal One is our source and our destination, our beginning and our end. May Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death awaken us to this truth: Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdof, the unrelenting pursuit of justice for all people. This is a bond we shared. Let it not be severed in sorrow. And together we say, Amen.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I want to acknowledge that our flags are at half-staff in honor of Justice Ginsburg, and so want to thank Governor Stitt for making that recognition on behalf of the state of Oklahoma, because I think that's important. Our next speaker that I'd like to bring up at this time, where is my list? There we go. I'd like to bring up Professor Danae Johnson from OCU School of Law. Please give her a round of applause.
Good evening. My name is Danae Johnson. I'm a professor of law at Oklahoma City University. I have been a professor for 18 years. I've been a lawyer for 27 years and a Black feminist for all of my life. I was a young law student when one of our greatest lawyers, one of our greatest jurists passed from this world. I remember when Thurgood Marshall died. I remember feeling alone and hurt. I remember mourning in a deep and quiet way because Thurgood Marshall was me and I was him. He belonged to me. He was a Black man who was intelligent, who pursued justice and equality. He was the best that my community had to offer at that time. And I felt alone in that mourning. That was January of 1993. In June of 1993, Bill Clinton nominated Ruth Bader Ginsburg to be a judge, a justice for the United States Supreme Court. And in August 1993, she was confirmed. At that time, I did not know that Ruth Bader Ginsburg could feel the void that the loss of Marshall had left in my heart. But she did that, and so much more. In April of 1997, I traveled from New York to DC to hear a very important case that was being argued at the Supreme Court. But in addition, I was tickled because I'd be able to see Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg at work. So I kind of felt like a kid going to see somebody at work, and I was tickled. I had learned of her numerous successes in front of the Supreme Court, her tireless fight for the rights of women and for equality of all for all, and I admired her use of Marshall's tactics in her own battles in front of the Supreme Court. During these past 18 years, I have been able to study her life, her opinions, her writings, and yes, those beautiful dissents. In 2010, I was the chair of the American Association of Law Schools, the Division of Women. We were a body of every female law professor in the nation. I created the Lifetime Achievement Award during that time. In 2012, I led a delegation of women to Washington, D.C., to the Supreme Court to honor Ruth Bader Ginsburg with our first Lifetime Achievement Award. Ginsburg was a gracious host. She was kind, she was charming, she was friendly. She told stories and she laughed easily. In her chambers, she had us look at the artwork, and she shared that her chambers were the former chambers of Justice Thurgood Marshall. It was in that moment that my life was complete. But what else was there? It was done. That's how I felt. She shared with us stories about her recently deceased husband. She talked to us as women about the trajectory of women who wanted and deserved it all. She had a huge stack of Mary Claire magazines on her credenza. And we found that to be just so curious. So when we inquired, she explained, Mary Claire magazine is also giving me a Lifetime Achievement Award. She chuckled, and so did we. But what it meant is that she was rising in prominence in pop culture with young women, that they were somehow drawn to her, making her the notorious RBG. That's the significance of the Mary Claire magazines. Now, I'm not naive. None of us is perfect. Justice Ginsburg, she had flaws and blind spots, but I admired her ability to apologize for missteps. And I most admired her ability just to endure. I will admit that while she was on the bench, I slept more soundly at night, trusting that she was guarding my rights. Every time there was a reported illness, I prayed for her strength. My students, my friends, my family, they know of my love and adoration for Ginsburg. And I have so enjoyed watching young women, a new generation of women, rally to her power. When I heard the news of Justice Ginsburg passing, I felt again that deep pain. I felt the salty tears run down my face. However, as a more mature woman, I know that Justice Ginsburg does not belong to me. I know that I need not mourn alone. I share her with all of you, and I thank you for that sharing. I'm happy that I can be here in a public forum to share this grief. My ask of all of you is that we not be alone, that we let our hearts, our minds, and our spirits come together, that we work to make this world, this country, and this state a better place, a more fair place. I'd like us, if we could, to acknowledge our isms and our privilege so that we can work together to help to dismantle systems and structures that injure communities that might be less fortunate, that look different than we do. I leave you with two RBG quotes. The first, I take literally as a Black woman and figuratively as a woman. It is, I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks. The second quote is that real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. I would like us to honor the life and be the legacy of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg by taking the next steps together. The struggle continues. Let us go out there and vote. Thank you.
Beautiful words, Professor Johnson. Thank you so much. And a thank you to, again, the League of Women Voters of Oklahoma City, our notaries, our volunteer notaries who are over there too. Thank you. And also to our United States Census Bureau represented over there to make sure that we all can be counted, that we all can get involved to ensure that we are moving in this season. Our next speaker is Oklahoma's Labor Commissioner, Commissioner Leslie Osborne.
I'd like to start with my favorite quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg. If you want to be a true professional, you will do something outside yourself, something to make life a little better for people less fortunate than you. I think that there were many of those groups that Ruth Bader Ginsburg stood for. In particular, I love that this was a woman of tiny stature, 100 pounds, 5 feet tall, that had a voice bigger than any man in the room. And she talks at great length in several of her memoirs about the feeling when Sandra Day O'Connor had retired and she was the only woman. And she was a tiny woman of stature. How that felt to her as 1 versus 8, even though she knew it didn't have to be versus. And then also what it meant to her when President Obama put 2 other women on there and she felt that equity start sliding a bit in the other direction. I've always been a firm proponent after 10 years in the legislature and now in statewide office that we will never in Oklahoma or nationwide have true representation until we match demographically where we stand as man, woman, gay, straight, Black, white, until we meet those true parameters of actually putting people in the legislative bodies that represent us, we can't expect to truly be represented. And that's incumbent. And that's incumbent upon everybody here. Everybody here has the power to either run for office or to help somebody run for office that helps us meet those demographics. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg often said that her main goal was always to interpret the 14th Amendment as a guarantee of equal protection would be applied not only to racial discrimination, but also to sex discrimination. And for any of us that stand as women in elected office, thank you, RBG. There was a time when women were expected to be barefoot and pregnant. I'm a single woman, and I've raised a very strong, independent female daughter who is also gay. And I will forever think the women like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, where she has a place in society to not only be a voice, but to be a leader. I want to end with one thing that's always been important to me that I think was also extremely important to her. She often declared that her approach was neither liberal nor conservative. And I think if we ask a lot of the people around us, they'd say, well, she was the liberal bloc. Her best friend in the courts was Anton Scalia, who was known for his conservative viewpoints. And they not only bridged their divide, but they had the utmost respect for each other. And in both of their times of the end of their lives, they counted them as one of their tiny, small group of the very best friends and influences in their lives. If there's nothing that we need more in America, in Oklahoma, right now, is to bridge this horrifying polarization and divide that's taken over our country and state. My prayer is, my fervent desire is that all of us can look at the example of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Anton Scalia, that it is okay, and not only okay, but wonderful to break bread with the other side and to find answers in the middle and to heal those divides in every manner of our lives. Let her be our example. Thank you.
Incredible words. Thank you so much, Commissioner Osborne. Before the program began, I had a conversation with Justice Grurich, and she was saying that there's only been 3 women elected to Oklahoma's highest courts in our state's history. So a lot of the words mentioned by Commissioner Osborne, and even looking at those demographics, are so important that all of us collected here are pushing more diverse folks to run for office, to serve in elected positions so that we can have the equity that we desire. So now I'm going to bring up Senate Minority Leader Kay Floyd to speak.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so grateful that you all would come out tonight with this weather. Tonight we're here to not only celebrate Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but to elevate her work and her legacy. My friends, everything she did and everything she left for us to do, her legacy is going to always be with us. With every opinion she wrote, and especially every dissent that she authored. You know, I was a baby attorney when RBG was appointed to the United States Supreme Court. She joined Sandra Day O'Connor, who had been there for 13 years, as the second woman to ever be appointed to the Supreme Court of our country. And as I watched their first photo shoot, and you all know the picture I'm talking about, every October you've got the 9 justices, and some of them are in the front sitting down, some of them are in the back standing up, and they're in their black robes. And when I looked at that picture for the first time, and I saw those 2 women standing there, it changed my life. It changed who I was as an attorney, and later on it would change who I was as a judge. And what I saw, and the reason it changed me, was because I realized that it was okay for women to bring their attributes, for women to bring their gifts and the special things that make us women to the legal profession. They brought that dignity to the United States Supreme Court. And I don't know if we will ever know how many people, how many young women, how many girls, how many mothers their example affected. But I know it had to have been millions, because if anyone out here who saw it, or anyone who's taught their daughter or talked to their grandmother about it, has ever looked at that picture and had the feeling I had, then you couldn't help but be changed. I will tell you that there's a sign out here about the dissent. When you're a judge, you have to defend your opinion. Numerous times, the majority of the times, you're going to have to put your decision into written form, and you're going to have to be prepared to explain it and defend it. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg was masterful at that. But where she really stood out was dissenting opinions. She was so good at a dissenting opinion. And she said one time, she said, dissent speaks to a future age. Dissent speaks to a future age. She did not just use dissenting opinions to tell her colleagues that they were wrong, and they usually were. She used that dissenting opinion to be able to make a point. And she believed that a powerful dissenting opinion would someday become a life-changing majority opinion. I'm going to conclude my remarks tonight with basically a rendition of what I consider Ruth Bader Ginsburg's greatest hits. And these are going to be quotes that I really like. And you all stole a couple of them. So my speech just got a lot shorter. Same again. Quote, when I'm sometime asked, when will there be enough women on the Supreme Court? And my answer is, when there are 9. And then she said, people are shocked. But there have been 9 men on this court, and nobody ever raised a question like that. Quote, we are at last beginning to relegate to the history books the idea of the token woman. Quote, I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask is our brethren that they take their feet off our necks. Quote, women belong in all places where decisions are being made. It shouldn't be that women are the exception. Quote, I would like to be remembered as someone who used whatever talent she had to do her work to the very best of her ability. Close quote. Thank you for the legacy you leave us, Justice Ginsburg. We will treat it with loving care.
Thank you so much, Leader Floyd. In my list of thank yous, I want to make sure that we thank Leader Emily Virgin and her executive assistant, Deborah Matthews, for helping with coordination behind the scenes to make sure we can get this nice lecture. We also want to thank Chase Kirby, because this is the reason why we have these speakers and you can hear what we're saying. So thank you to Chase for providing this service to us this evening. I'll now move to our second to last speaker, Ali Shen, Executive Director of Freedom, Oklahoma.
Thank you, Bailey. Ali Shen, my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I run the Queer and Trans Advocacy Group, along with the best group of queer and trans people anywhere in the nation here in the Bible Belt. And today I am pretty solidly gay for a living, but I was 16 years old when homosexuality was decriminalized in this nation. And we pretend that that was a long time ago, but I was in high school when it was no longer illegal for me to be gay in Oklahoma. And in 2003 in Lawrence v. Texas, the court found that criminalization of homosexuality was unconstitutional. But by that time, I had long known that I was gay, and I had long known that being gay was wrong and something I must hide. At that time, my government also overwhelmingly agreed. But with that ruling, the highest court in the land issued the second in a series of rulings that changed the way LGBTQ and Two-Spirit communities are treated in this nation. Romer v. Evans, Lawrence v. Texas, Windsor v. United States, Obergefell v. Hodges, Bostock v. Clayton County. None of these victories were possible without Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The life that I lead today would not be possible without Justice Ginsburg. And so it's undeniable that we lost a hero to our movement on Friday, and I'm so honored to be speaking with these incredible women who are paying honor to her. And I know so many here tonight are in deep mourning, for this giant of jurisprudence for our nation and especially for our future, which is so uncertain. We're cycling through grief-induced rage that leaves us wondering where we go from here, when it seems here has us backed into an impossible corner. But friends, I was asked here tonight to remind us that we've been backed into corners before. The truth is also, for millions of marginalized folks right here in this country and for billions of people around the world, the Supreme Court is not where we seek justice. The Supreme Court interprets the Constitution, sure, but we know that the Constitution and the systems that it's purported to protect are deeply flawed. And for that reason, the promises of liberty cannot lie in the judiciary, but deep within ourselves and our communities. And it is up to us, to each of us, to reach for them. Because my bullying did not end the day the Supreme Court ruled in Lawrence v. Texas. I wish it had. But I was still 6 years away from bursting through those closet doors. My torment ended when I found my community, when I found my truth, when I stepped into the power of being unapologetically who I am, and when I began to use the identities that the world had used against me to organize for something more. So I don't say that to minimize this decision or to discount the magnitude of this loss, because it is indeed incalculable, and the ramifications for LGBTQ and Two-Spirit rights could be devastating and likely will be. Over years, they'll try to chip away at every single victory we've achieved, and then they'll do so until each of them are rendered meaningless. But they can only do that if we let them. And so we cannot let them, because the courts, that's right. The courts are not our only tool. Queer and trans people are uniquely prepared for moments like these. We are organizers and dissidents. We naturally distrust power, and then power taught us to distrust it a little more. We are radical by nature. We challenge the status quo with our mere existence. We seek truth and we build community, even in the heart of the Bible Belt, where try as they might, they cannot stamp us out. We are not going anywhere. And the truth about my community and the people that love us is that deep in each of our hearts is a fiery discontent with injustice, an unquenchable thirst for what is right and for what is good. We live on the margins of every community. We understand that our collective liberation is bound together, that we cannot divorce our struggles from each other's, and we are in this together. And because of that, we will never stop fighting. We can't. It's just not who we are. So I can't tell you tonight that everything is okay, and I won't deny the gravity of this moment or the challenges that lie ahead, because to do so would be an insult to the truth and to your intelligence. But what we as queer and trans people and the people who love us know is that our revolution can only grow from the fertile ground of goodness and truth. If our movement is to matter, we must name what we are facing, we must wrestle with our desperation and our fear, and we must act from that place without knowing today whether or not we will be victorious. It's up to us to write that story, and we have to act without knowing how it will end. The key is to keep going and to act, because unfounded pessimism and unfounded optimism are twin tools of oppression. The belief that everything is and will be okay without our intervention, and the cynical belief that nothing we ever do will matter, are in fact born from the same forces that wish for us to be still and silent. But we are deeply engaged, and those of us who are doing the work know that the future belongs to us. And it doesn't feel like it, but I promise that is no less true today than it was last week. We are not in control, but we are not powerless. So let's grieve tonight. Let's share our fears and our anger, and then let's work. We will almost certainly lose the Supreme Court. The news today told us that. But what is also true is that the courts are but one tool of our democracy, and that systems will crumble, and it is up to all of us to build something better in their place. So we have been handed an imperfect, incomplete, and flailing movement, but we are ready to be the stewards of the movement that this future deserves. I know that we don't feel ready. I wish it wasn't us, I really do. But I also know that we are ready, and it's what Ruth would want from us. Thank you. I'm gonna leave that for Bailey.
Allie, thank you so much for those incredible words. Well needed this evening. Let's give all of our speakers so far a round of applause, y'all. They are leaving us with some incredible nuggets of inspiration to leave with this evening. And that was definitely one of our goals, is to make sure that we can mourn collectively, but leave inspired. As I mentioned in the beginning, Friday we said we need to do something collectively. We got a group of several folks together to put something together in 4 days. And so want to say thank you to Lori Walkie, Caroline Lowry, our board president of the Oklahoma Women's Coalition, Laura Lang, and Crystal Yosef for ensuring that we could get the word out and make sure more people know about this event tonight. So thank you ladies, for your work and making sure this could happen. So the greatest person in our work for the Oklahoma Women's Coalition, the most important, and our fearless leader, we're going to have her come up to give us a call to action. So please join me in welcoming our executive director, Liz Charles, for our call to action.
No pressure, right? Yeah. Some of y'all are going to be mad at me, and I apologize in advance. I have a wall of hate mail, and you know, send it my way. I stare at it, and it makes me remember that I'm in the right job and I'm doing the right thing. I cannot express how touching it is, how grateful I am that you are out here standing in this drizzle with me in the midst of the world being on fire, in the midst of a global pandemic. I know for many of you, this may be one of your first social outings, and I don't take that for granted. And I hope you feel respected. I hope you feel safe. And I just want to thank you so much for bringing your kids here, for making signs. There are awesome RBG collar masks in the crowd. This is really, I was so shocked. I'm sure so many of you were on Friday. It's like my body couldn't comprehend. It couldn't absorb the shock of this loss. And I know that's why you're here too, because we've been isolated for months and months, and it feels so lonely and so overwhelming. And so we wanted to create this space for you, but this space would be nothing if you didn't show up and come. So thank you so much for being here. I want to echo some thank yous just to make sure we cover everyone, because we literally had a call on Saturday afternoon, and then now here we are. So to our board members who were a part, Laura Lang, Bailey Perkins, our MC and organizer. I'm going to tell you something. Bailey's name popped up on my phone 10 minutes after I got the news about RBG, and she's like, we got to do something. And all I could feel was like, I can't. So we are here because of Bailey Perkins. So thank you so much. Caroline Lowry, Shelley Academy, and then other members of our planning committee. We mentioned Reverend Dr. Lori Walkie, Danae Johnson, and Erica Lucas. Crystal Yosef of Conjo Concepts handled all of our PR and media. Chase Kirby, you can actually hear us, and I'm not yelling into a blowhorn or a horn right now, so that's great. Andy Moore with Let's Fix This is live streaming this on Facebook. Thank you. League of Women Voters, and the Tricia Woodward with the U.S. Census Bureau. Arts Council of OKC donated those cardboard trash cans so we don't have to pick up all the water bottles. And speaking of water bottles, Miss Kathy Harms with Teen Empower donated those as well and volunteered. And thank you to those volunteers who showed up early to help us set up. I appreciate you all so much. One quick other logistical note before I start crying into this microphone. We will, for those of you who have actual candles and need those lit, we will have volunteers going out through the crowd to make sure that you can light. And if you want to light your neighbors, if you feel comfortable extending your arm to light your neighbor's candle, we'll have that start here in just a moment when we have our closing song. And of course, thank you to our speakers. Sorry, thank you all so much. Danae said on our call when we were planning the speakers, she said, I will put my grief in a little pocket so I can be able to get up there and speak. And I echo that. I will put my grief in a really big pocket. Like so many of you, I am grieving. My bones carry the fatigue of fear and anger in mourning the loss of one of the greatest champions of our voices, our rights, and our hope for a more equitable future. We must give space for this acute sadness. We must honor RBG's life by pausing to recognize her immeasurable contribution in shaping a more thriving democracy, and to express gratitude for her fiery embodiment of resistance, dissent, and a tireless appeal and commitment to a higher morality. In the midst of my grief, I have found comfort in knowing exactly what Justice Ginsburg would want us to do right now. She left us a legacy, and now it is our turn to carry it forward. Our duty is to resist. Our oppressors are counting on our apathy, our hopelessness, our resignation. I urge us, I urge myself, I urge you, resist hopelessness, resist apathy. Do not give up, not now. Fight. We are fiercer, smarter, braver, and more strategic than our oppressors because we have had to be. Every Black woman, Indigenous woman, person of color, every queer person, every immigrant, every trans or non-binary person, every woman who has shattered their own glass ceiling knows how it feels to have to justify your very existence. And while we can learn from and honor the champions of equality and justice, past and present, it is important to remember, especially now, when the very fabric of our democracy is being ripped apart in front of our eyes, that the fate of the marginalized and the oppressed does not rest solely on the shoulders of our courts and political institutions of power. Protection within our laws is rarely afforded to those who experience the most oppression. Yes, we have Roe v. Wade, and yet our laws are not there as our country exercises extreme violence against women in the form of forced sterilizations. We have marriage equality, and yet our laws were not there when the lives of Black trans women like Dominique Remy Fells, Bree Black, Mercy Mack, Tatiana Hall, and Tony McDade were brutally and violently taken. We have protections for gender-based violence, and yet our laws are not there to protect thousands of Indigenous women who go missing and murdered every single year. The systems of racism and discrimination in place in our country are still oppressing us. Their foot is literally and figuratively on our neck. They do not save us. We save us. We are the agents of change and social pressure that shape our country and our democracy's future. There are possibilities before us, and we have an obligation to those like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who fought for us to take the torch to dissent and to fight like hell for equity and equality. We have an obligation to carry Justice Ginsburg's work forward and to also acknowledge areas where she got it wrong, especially related to the harm done to Indigenous communities by the court. To acknowledge that the law does not always change as quickly or readily as necessary is precisely what Justice Ginsburg worked her entire career toward. We earnestly celebrate her legacy by acknowledging that she was human and she had flaws. Our humanity is never an excuse to allow the status quo to stand, but rather it is what connects us in the pursuit of justice. Small actions by all of us are what will make the difference. Be ready to organize. I'm going to call you. Be ready. Do not let cynicism or apathy take over, because now is the time to work. And I know we're tired, but we have to work. Yes, give yourself space and time to grieve, to catch your breath, and breathe deeply, because normal does not exist anymore. Grow your strength. You will need it. Nurture your anger. It is a symptom of your hope. Do what you can with the tools that you have. Tell your story. Create and share art. Vote in every election. Volunteer as a poll worker. Make calls for a local candidate who champions the issues you care about. Donate $10, $15 to their campaign. Give money to local grassroots organizations like the Oklahoma Women's Coalition, working to advance equality and equity in Oklahoma. Make a list of 5 friends to text every week and remind them to get their butts out there and vote. Non-Black people, listen closely. We have to start having uncomfortable and necessary conversations with our non-Black friends and family members about systemic racism, police brutality, and Black Lives Matter. Join me in confronting and challenging implicit bias, microaggressions, and racism in our own lives, and commit yourself to the anti-racism work. Everyone can do something. Justice Ginsburg fought for our right and power to choose our own course, our own destiny, and now her fight becomes our fight. Thank you, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Thank you. We will take it from here.
I don't know about you, but I feel fired up. Ready to go. Thank you so much, Liz, for all that you do and for leaving us with important words that we can live with in moving forward at this time. So we are going to end with something so special. When we were planning the way we were going to end tonight, we decided to end with a song. And the song that came to my mind was Rise Up by Audra Day. And there's no person who can sing it better than Kai Dawson. So please give Kai and her mother, Shawn Dawson, a round of applause as they close us out this evening to give us hope and motivation to take us with us as we go home. And before we close, be sure to take your candles and put them on the table on the side after the song concludes.
Broken down and tired, living life on a merry-go-round. You can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Ooh, mountains, we gon' walk it out and feel like dying, but I know that we'll take this world to its feet. Ooh, mountains, take it to its feet. Ooh, mountains, and I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other. For that we have each other, and we'll rise, we'll rise, we'll rise. Oh, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up in spite of the ache, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up, we'll rise like the waves. We'll rise up, we'll rise unafraid. We'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. We love you, RBG.
Thank you all so much for coming out this evening. I hope that you feel prepared to rise up, because it's time for us to take on the mantle. Have a wonderful evening and be safe getting home.